Has modern sport become too sanitised? Well, that's the question we're going to post today here on the Andrew Woodhouse Show. Welcome. It's Friday, the 13th of September 2024. Spooky. We're here to discuss modern sport. Is it too safe? Has it lost some of the magic? I'm going to say it has. And one of the reasons is that I think people are looking too much into what's effective and, the meta, as it were, and not really thinking about individuality and thinking about flair, skill, creativity, things like that. So we'll explore it to some degree, and football is certainly the place to start for me, because I've noticed when watching football these last 5 years that it hasn't been quite as much fun as what it used to be. It hasn't given sort of the same emotions. I think there's two real reasons for that. I think the first one is that a lot of teams are trying to find almost the meta, right? And they're trying to do that through statistics. They're trying to do that through probabilities and percentages. That's why some teams, managers, they don't enjoy, say, their team taking shots from outside the box, because it lowers the probability down by quite a lot. Sometimes by about 500%, compared to a shot from inside the penalty area, sort of inside where the penalty spot is. Possession football's become the norm because it is the percentage game. It is the safest ploy. And this all stems really from an article that I read on the BBC website yesterday, which is called Slow Death of the Screamer. And this was what a lot of people think was sort of around the peak of when football as a spectator sport kind of reached its height. December 2006, in the Premier League, the Goal of the Month contest on Match of the Day, right? 10 goals. All 10 of them could have been Goal of the Month in any other month. But they were all in the same month. There was Paul Scholes' iconic volley off the bar against Aston Villa. There was Michael Essien nearly breaking the net from about 35 yards out with a first-time shot. Didier Drogba rifle one in over the goalkeeper. You've got Matty Taylor smashing one in from 55 yards. And I don't think that happens as often these days, because I think managers... I think there's too much on the line in professional football these days in terms of money, in terms of notoriety, fame, things like that. And I think that managers are scared to allow players to express themselves. One man who absolutely is not scared of that, though, is former Leeds United manager, current Uruguay manager, Marcelo Bielsa, who, I'm a Leeds fan, legend in these parts, of course. But he said in an interview a couple of months ago, he said, football has more and more spectators, but is becoming less and less attractive. What made the game the best in the world at the time is not being prioritised today. No matter how many people watch football, if you don't ensure that what people watch is something pleasant, it will only benefit the business, because the business only cares about how many people watch it. But in a few years, the players who deserve to be watched will be less, and the game produced will be less enjoyable. This current artificial increase of spectators will end. Football is not 5 minutes of highlights. Football is much more than that. It's a cultural expression. It's a way of identification. Right? I think this is a great quote. I think it's a great philosophical point that Bielsa makes, because it's called the beautiful game for a reason. It's not called the game of percentages and the game of probabilities, but the money at stake, especially in the Premier League, getting into the Champions League, things like that, they do call for a way of playing that is more percentage based. Because if you've got hundreds of millions of pounds riding on a promotion or a place in Europe or a new stadium, for instance, like Everton are doing at the moment, are you going to be taking undue risks? Are you going to be saying to your players, "Oh yeah, go and shoot from 40 yards, I don't care"? You've got a good shot from outside the box. Yeah, just shoot as much as you can. Or are you going to be saying, well, if there's an easy pass on, if there's an easy through ball, if there's an easy square ball from the byline, you'd be doing that, wouldn't you? Because the percentage is just a bit higher. I've got the statistics here, actually. It was in this article that I saw the other day, and the reason comes to do with XG, essentially, right? James York at StatsBomb, which it says here is one of the sports leading data suppliers and analytics companies, says that after about 25 yards out, only about 1 in 33 shots goes in. From 20 yards, it's about 1 in 17. And then from 12 yards, where the penalty spot is, it's only about 50-50. But 50-50 is better, obviously, than 1 in 33. So if you can set up your team to work that sort of style, where you can get those high percentage chances in and around the 6-yard box, like Manchester City tend to do, and teams like that, then you're going to be set up well for success in the modern era. Now, this was always the case, of course, right? This was always the case. It was always, of course, more likely that you're going to score a goal from just around outside the 6-yard box than it was from 30 yards out. But a couple of things really in the recent years have sort of changed that sort of trend. And one of them is the quality of the pitches, which allow you to play better football. So sometimes just smashing it from 25 yards sometimes that used to be the best option, right? Because especially the penalty areas used to be quite muddy, quite uneven. But now these surfaces are so meticulously prepared by the ground staff, they're so expertly done, that you could play a whole 90 minutes on a pitch in absolute pissing down, siling down rain, and the surface is going to be as pristine as it was when it started. I think goalkeepers have improved as well. Goalkeepers are bigger in general, I think, too. So it's definitely harder to score from further out. And then, like I say, there's the fear factor. There's the factor that a manager's job could rest on whether you win this game. And does he want you taking a 1 in 33 probability attempt on goal? Or does he want you to try and work it into the box for a better chance? Because even if you lose the ball, the trying to manufacture that 6-yard box goal is possibly worth losing the ball in the final third instead of going for a pot shot that goes out for a goal kick. So football's one of these examples. I think basketball is another one where I was talking to somebody on Threads, I think it was the other day, about how basketball for me has become probably the worst spectator sport out of all the major sports, really, because I think I'm always going to gravitate to football or baseball, right? That's just who I am. But football still, I still get the chance to watch Leeds United 20 times a year on the TV, so that will excite me in itself. Baseball, you can watch that nearly every day. They've made big strides in actually making the game more exciting. Hockey is always going to be exciting. And American football, I think the shorter season and the hype around it makes it exciting. I think that the ingenuity and the athleticism of the players has made that, just as exciting as it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. So I think basketball is now the worst one. And it's not on a one-off game basis, really, because, the Paris Olympics had some fantastic basketball games. You can see that was really enjoyable for the spectators and even for the players to play in. But basketball has turned into a game of layups and three-pointers. It seems like a lot of the fun and creativity has gone out of that sport as well. Steph Curry is entirely to blame because he's too good. But he also showed people that it can be done. So you've got more and more people now. In fact, a lot of players really can barely carve out a career in the NBA if they can't shoot a three-pointer now. It used to be that you could have a glaring hole in your game or two if you had some glaring strengths. Would Shaquille O'Neal be quite as important if he played in 2024 because he doesn't have a three-point shot in his arsenal? The mid-range jumper has virtually disappeared. And I think the game's worse off for it. And basketball isn't the only one. You look at Formula One, where I think Formula One, a lot of the sanitization of Formula One hasn't come from some of the areas that you would expect, like maybe the sort of over safetification of the tracks, which is actually slowly being sort of balanced out, with more gravel traps and a little bit more risk. I don't think it's that. I think there's two parts to this. I think the first part is the car's reliability is as good as it's ever been. You're not even guaranteed to watch a race on a Sunday now and get any retirements. And sometimes in the 90s and the 2000s, I watched races where only 6 or 7 or 8 cars finished the Grand Prix. And maybe half of those were mechanical failures. So that's gone away. So that takes away a bit of the unpredictability of it. But that's sort of not really anybody's fault. That's actual progress, right? And in a way it's good because, you want cars to be still in the race. You want cars to be finishing the Grand Prix and getting the chance to pick up points. But I think as well, a lot of data analysis, strategy, the strategies, the simulations that the teams run are so intense now. They're so unbelievably detailed, and they run so many different scenarios as well, based on if a driver pits. You might be racing, say that you might be in 4th place, you might be racing a driver for 3rd for the final step on the podium. The teams will have at their bases, their headquarters, they'll have a simulation that predicts if the 3rd place driver is going to pit on lap 15 or if they're going to pit on lap 17, or what happens if a backmarker stays out, or what happens if the leader comes out and pits and ends up right in front of you. What happens if there's rain? What happens if you stay out? What happens if there's a safety car? All these eventualities are worked out to the point where really you've got to be a genius to do F1 strategy, and it's a wonder that Ferrari even manage to do it right about 30% of the time. But for me, sometimes it takes a bit of the fun out, because it's not like teams are making mistakes like they used to, where they used to be like, oh, well, yeah, he's just about going to get out in front of this person, and then they miscalculate, then they end up behind, it ruins the race, and then they bitch about it for a few weeks. Now it's very, very calculated, very, very precise, and sometimes it doesn't always help the spectacle for the spectators. The advent of statistics is one of the best things that's happened to sport, and it's one of the worst. I think a lot of people who maybe watch this video have seen the film Moneyball. If you haven't, go and watch it, because it's one of my favourites, and it explains. It's a great sporting story, but it's a great story about how to look at a situation differently to what seems like quite an obvious problem. And in Moneyball, the Oakland A's took these sabermetrics, these statistical analyses, and they applied them to building a roster of players that could challenge potentially for a World Series championship. And initially it was frowned upon by the fans, by the commentators, by their own staff. But eventually, it started to work. They did a great season. I won't spoil it sort of for those who haven't seen the film. But what happened after that? And you might ask yourself, well, why are the Oakland Athletics so bad now? Why have they had only a handful of playoff teams in the last 20 years since that 2002 season? And one of the reasons is because everybody else is doing it now. So players that were undervalued, that the Oakland A's managed to pick up. The one in the film is Scott Hatterberg, a catcher who couldn't really throw anymore and ended up playing first base, but his bat was still enough to kind of meet the requirements. Players like that, who were undervalued and not picked up, were suddenly then getting picked up, and suddenly they were having to go against all the other 29 teams to pick up these players. And the same thing's happening in football as well. It's rarer to unearth a gem from a lower league in England, or a lower league or a league in another country, in fact, or even another continent, because all the top football clubs, they've got their scouts up to their eyes. They've got many data analysts who will be crunching the numbers, and they'll be saying, well, this guy's XG is this, and this guy's passing accuracy is that, and everything. And so the fun's not only been taken out of the actual game on the pitch. I think Euro 2024 was one of the main things. I thought it was a great tournament in terms of drama, in terms of storylines, in terms of intrigue. The football on the pitch was, a lot of the time, not fantastic. And I think that was sort of its nadir, its peak of rubbish, and of this current era of, we have to be careful. England, have been criticised for that under Gareth Southgate, and that's maybe one man's approach, right? But you can't deny that that's gone into the players' heads, and now you feel like numbers are one of the more defining features of whether a player is judged to be world class, instead of potentially how they are as a player. And maybe in some cases that's fine, because at the end of the day, production and what do you do in terms of goals, assists, and, like we said, tackles won, passing accuracy, saves, fouls committed, all this factors into your worth as a football player. I do understand that, but maybe we can bring some of that beauty back to the beautiful game. VAR doesn't help, because while the technology is fine for the most part, it's got some issues, of course, and more in how it's implemented actually than the technology itself. I feel like there should be a rule change where, but well, I can come to that another time. But VAR takes some of the joy out of the celebration of football as well. You score a goal in the Premier League. I mean, Leeds were in the Premier League for 3 seasons. We score a goal, and then you'd spend the next 30 seconds going, well, is it going to count or not? Or are they going to go to a VAR review? Are they going to disallow the goal that we've just celebrated? So can you ever fully celebrate until a goal is given? And that takes some of the fun and the spontaneity out of the game in itself. I agree with the use of VAR. I always agree with what Alan Shearer said, that it should be for clear and obvious decisions. It should be like cricket, where, if it's not a clear mistake, it should go with the call on the field. Because I think a lot of referees are choosing to cop out and just see what VAR says instead of making a decision themselves. Cricket has the best form of umpiring video review system, the DRS. Like I said, because if there's any doubt, it goes with the umpire's call. And unless it's proven by a certain margin that the umpire was wrong, his decision will stand, and it will be tough titties for the batsman. Or the bowler, of course. But how do we breathe life back into sport? How do we bring back that joy? I think it's going to be something that... I think the solution is watch your local Sunday League teams, because there's no VAR, there's referees who probably barely know the rules, there's players who probably barely know the rules. Actually, watch your local team. Watch your local Sunday League team. Watch your local non-league team. Go back to the grassroots. Go to club race meetings, where if there probably isn't a strategist, and if there is, he's asleep in the pit lane or eating a hot dog somewhere. Go back to the grassroots of sport, because at the end of the day, that's where the joy is. That's where sport is not sanitized. Sport is raw, passionate. Sometimes it's crap, but that's what makes it fun. We've all played sport at a certain level. Being crap's funny. Being crap is interesting. Being crap is sometimes what keeps you going to play and get better. I don't think professional sport will ever truly recover to the point where we're all taking immense amounts of joy from it on a daily or weekly basis. I don't think that goal of the month competition from 2006 is ever coming back. And that's a shame, because sport is wonderful. But I think money's taken over. I think business has swallowed up the things that we love. That's something to think about, isn't it? Well, if you've enjoyed my rant, my little analysis of the sort of dirge that sport's become recently, like, share and subscribe for more. Hopefully you haven't found me to be a dirge. I mean, some people would say, but no, I really enjoy making these videos for you. I hope you enjoy as well the new camera. You can now see my face in more detail, which is a horror to many, I'm sure. But please like the video, share it, subscribe. Share it with your mates. Have a conversation about it. It is a conversation starter as well. Leave a comment. Tell me what you think. Tell me, am I right? Am I wrong? Do we need to do something about it? And if so, how? And from me on the Andrew Woodhouse Show, until next time, see you down the road. See you soon.